Welcome, friends, to our Thursday night live here on Inside Texas channel, joined by Mr. Evan Beat, the man, the myth, the legend. He's everything over on Inside Texas right now. Evan, doing okay, brother?
I'm doing great, yeah.
Yeah, good, man. And speaking of Evan and being on Inside Texas, go ahead and hop on over there. Join Inside Texas, be a part of our community, 50% off on that transfer portal Ultimate Fan Bundle. Still got that up and running. It is still portal season. And as you know, Texas made another ad today with Melvin Ciani, the playing left tackle at Wake Forest. Evan, quick thoughts on the addition of Melvin and what that might look like and, his role with the 2026 offense.
Yeah, it aligns with a lot of what Kyle Flood's looking for in his offensive lineman. Pass block first kind of player. I mean, really, really good. I believe 99% efficiency on pass block sets, 9 pressures on the year, 0 sacks, playing as a tackle for Wake Forest. And that's P4 competition. He's playing against some good teams here or there. And that's what you're looking for from a tackle is not someone who's going to give up bad sacks and not going to have a lot of penalties, which he stayed away from mostly. And it's aligning with this idea that Flood we're starting to see, and with Jordan Seaton potentially being a target. We'll see where that goes with Ciani entering the fray. But they're interested in that tackle to guard pipeline of getting 3 tackles into this team, maybe even 4, and having them battle it out for that left tackle, right tackle spot. And then the loser of it gets to then start at right guard. And I'm not against it. I mean, Flood's better with tackles. We were joking about that on the pre-show a little bit. But I'm a little concerned with how if that's how 2 of our guards look. If it's just one and maybe you're adding another true guard to play left guard, then you have Baker or Ciani at right guard, which I know you have more your opinions on. And then you have Sikorsky as your number 1 swing guy, your backup, can play left guard, right guard, maybe even be the backup center. I'm there for that, but especially if they're going to pay up for Seaton still and somehow outbid the Nike money at Oregon or however that works, it concerns me a little bit that if they're going to go that all in on the O-line, that 2 of the players will be playing a position they haven't played at the college level.
No, absolutely. I mean, you hear talk about getting the best 5 guys. Does that mean the best 5 offensive line options in the portal? Maybe so, but fit matters. Have a guard as guard, and it's a completely different position than a tackle. So yeah, I mean, like theoretically, like sure, it could work. But I definitely piggyback on the sentiment from Evan that, it is a little bit concerning if, you were to add a 4th guard. But I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm curious to see, hear your thoughts on something else that we mentioned before we started going live here. Watching a lot of this tape, he definitely, to me, is a guy that could go play guard for Texas and maybe just as serviceable as he was as a tackle, which then still, obviously allows the option of having Gooseby, having Baker. I think if one of those guys between Baker and Ciani were to go down to guard, me personally, my thoughts are that I would rather it be Ciani. Now, Texas probably isn't done though at guard. There's going to be another name out there that probably pops up. Eric has mentioned, the last couple of days about, there being a name he's really interested in seeing if it does indeed enter the portal and show up on that old ported database. And speaking of that, Jordan Seaton's name has officially popped up and appeared in that database. He made his decision to enter, and we've seen other guys who've made decisions to enter, and their names never pop up. So there's all types of different ways that these kids, or these schools rather, are trying to hang on to their individual kids. And I'm not saying that's what Colorado was doing, but he is officially in the portal. We can talk about him a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Ideally for you, Evan, would you rather Texas maybe backdoor into finding another guard or a big name guard if that doesn't come to fruition in the portal, or would you rather them go with the approach that we just kind of both shared concerns with, adding Jordan Seaton, maybe sliding Baker, definitely sliding Ciani inside? Is that serviceable enough for you to protect Arch Manning and to help this run game in 2026? Or are you more leaning towards, hey, I'd rather have a true guard come in?
I mean, I wouldn't say no to it. I'd like it. Jordan Seaton is clearly an awesome player. If Gooseby's not the number 1 tackle in next year's class, it's because it's Jordan Seaton is. He wouldn't have been eligible this year, and Gooseby was up there. And so I think Mike Renner had him as a number 6 overall pick at a point not too long ago. So these are 2 really good tackles. And if it means Baker and Ciani go inside, and they can go inside, yeah, that's Texas having a fantastic offensive line, one that's probably as good as 2024 is, maybe even better than that. Just off of the actual talent of the guys there. But yeah, it's a little concerning, and they're not done on the defense. I think that would maybe, if they were to get Seaton, that would pretty much wrap it up on the offense. Maybe you're looking for some true depth at quarterback, running back, maybe even one more offensive lineman with a little bit more experience to play it behind these guys. But they still maybe need a Mike linebacker, and that's going to cost some money. They might want to go for a BPA defensive back. Like, is there a safety that can just immediately start next to McDonald, or an outside cornerback, or even a slot guy that moves Littleton outside? I do still think there's a little money to spend, and Seaton's going to be expensive, and that's a lot of money to move around positions that you already were going to have to do without Siani, but you definitely have to do with him, because Seaton comes in and say he is your best left tackle. That moves Gooseby to right tackle and then Baker to right guard, which I made a tweet about this. You're upgrading 3 positions doing that. So I'm okay with that. But then you're also moving Siani to left guard, and he's played left tackle and right tackle in college, so he's moved around. But that's just a lot of different guys going to different places. And Gooseby's a better left tackle probably than he is right tackle for this team. It's just a lot going on. If they can shell out the money and still complete the rest of the roster, we'll do it. Go ahead, man. Like, there's no – I know we're talking about this $20.5 million cap. They can spend the money if they're able to even talk about the discussion. So, go do it if you can. But I'm not getting pissed off if they're not bringing him in. I'd rather have Cam Coleman than I would Jordan Seaton.
Agreed. No, I fully agreed. I think that what you saw out of Baker and what you saw out of Gooseby, obviously Gooseby all season, Baker more the last half, especially the end of the year, I think he was really coming to his own there at right tackle. And so you start to look at the guard positions, and is a Baker and him playing guard as, a first experience at guard, at least at the collegiate level, like, what does that look like? And that's not something that I feel like anybody truly knows the answer to. You know what I mean? You might have your thoughts, but Texas thought Connor Stroh was going to work out a guard left guard last season. So for me, it's continuity definitely matters. And you're talking about moving around a lot of guys. Spending the money, that's just another point to be made here. You could probably find 2 to 3 guys for that interior, that offensive line, for the cost of a Jordan Seaton. And so, when you're still talking about, hey, you might want to go find somebody at middle linebacker. Evan just mentioned it. We talked about it on last night's show. I think Texas needs to add a middle linebacker, a true middle linebacker, as maybe Ty Anthony comes into, figuring out that position. Texas does not have many off weeks next year. And that's, for me, it's like, 3 or 4 games into the season, Jonah Williams is safety. He might be ready to rock. But week 2, you got Ohio State coming to town. So that's why I'm still going to feel the way that I do about adding a safety, adding a middle linebacker. You have to be prepared from the jump for next season, and to do so against, elite competition. Now, again, Ohio State's not having a super, sexy portal season, if you will. And so I do feel good and feel better by the day, honestly, about that matchup. But, we've seen things change. It can turn, pull in a big name or two overnight. We've seen Texas do it and several others in this portal cycle. So for me, I'm thinking, I'm still leaning two guards because, again, you mentioned Dylan Sikorsky as being potentially a starter, potentially a depth piece. But let's make that competition and a fight for that job. Let's make it competitive. Let's make it as interesting as possible. Now, let's move to center for just one second. And this is not really portal related. We can make everything portal related. Do you think Texas maybe needs somebody else behind Connor Robertson at center? Is that something that, you've heard any, inklings about Texas doing in the portal, or are you just kind of looking in-house as a guy that's going to be the serviceable backup to Connor?
Yeah, I'd hope that they'd add one more guy who has that flexibility. Maybe they think that Sikorsky can do that, but a lot of times when you're making an offensive line, and I saw some pushback on this, and Texas has never had to use more than 8 offensive linemen in the Sark era. That's just usually what teams are going into a year with comfortable, is you have 8 guys who can give you starters and then tackle backup, guard backup, center backup. And maybe that center backup, like last year, was your left guard, and the guard backup that then comes in. Either way, I think they have the tackles this year, especially with Siani, and maybe you move Baker down, whatever happens. Kojo and Chapman are still around there. They've had a lot of time in the system. And you'd like to have a starting guard so that Sikorsky can be the backup guard. But then after that, are you sure that any of those other guys can go and play center? I think the most obvious guy right now is Jackson Christian, who just came in and redshirted last year. But that's a redshirt freshman who his first year was pretty much just getting his body right and taking snaps on the scout team. But when I remember observing the team in practice, and their backup centers were Hudson, Nate Kibble, and Connor Stroh. Like, those were the guys taking the backup center snaps. So none of those guys are going to be on the team behind Robertson this year. And yeah, I'm a little concerned about how that would look if Robertson were to go down. That seems like something you can do really late in the portal, similar to the idea of bringing in a random quarterback to back up Arch Manning, or if you want like a true bruising goal line guy, like a floor setting running back. you can find that anywhere in the portal. There's still a lot of uncommitted guys, but yeah, like that's something that I'm glad you brought up because I don't think many people talked about how we don't really have a backup center for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I've been concerned about that. Obviously, there's other points of emphasis amongst that offensive line that have garnered a lot of talk, and rightfully so. But yeah, I mean, you got to leave no stone unturned. I continue to say that on this show. I just think it makes sense. You want to be as amply prepared as you can going into next season. You want to be able to provide depth at positions of needs. Texas injuries are part of it. There's going to be an injury amongst this offensive line, whether minor or serious, at some point in the season. It's very difficult and very rare that you see all 5 guys just completely healthy and just taking every snap for teams. So yeah, I'm definitely looking at depth amongst the center position, guard position as well, while we're still working on front end starters for guard. Now, you brought up the running back position, and that's another point or a topic of conversation that we had on the show last night. Would you personally, Evan, would you add a third back out of the transfer portal, to maybe be that bruiser type, a little bit better in between the tackles than what Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers, James Simon, and then a very young Derek Cooper could be?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. You there? All right, Evan's figuring out some audio stuff. I will go ahead and share the same sentiment I shared last night. I would take one more back in this class, just because, you do have a Derek Cooper coming in who is, on tape. He is not scared to run between the tackles whatsoever. But I do think it's very important that you add one more guy to keep him as fresh as possible. That also, they help each other stay fresh, help the other backs on the goal line, gives you a little bit tougher mentality there on the goal line in the red zone. He's back. Are you back?
I'm back.
He's back. There he is. But yeah, so I shared my thoughts, Evan. What would you do? Would you add another back? I'm team to add one more cat because, like you said, there's a ton of uncommitted prospects out there, and you can find some dang good value.
I'm cool with a guy who's got 2 years of experience or eligibility left for himself to just if you really just need to make sure that it's week 6 and you're having one of Brown or Smothers is injured and the other one's banged up a little bit and you're not loving where Cooper or Simon or Terry are at, just one guy. I mean, that's kind of what CJ Donaldson did for Ohio State this year. He ended up being their number 3 a lot of the year, but he was probably a higher tier player than Texas would be going after, but just guy who can run between the tackles at the goal line. It's been something Texas has struggled with so much. So I'd take someone that you could have for this year, and if he's cool to be another role player next season, whether that means a Smothers back or if they're going to go into the portal again or they like where Simon or Cooper or Terry is at, I'm fine with that. But yeah, like let's just make sure there's no page unturned and that we're not going to the season thin anywhere for no reason when, frankly, there's just so many people out there and you don't have to worry about money as much at Texas and you have the extended roster spots. Like we could get to 92 roster spots and have, 9 of those not really matter, even though they're not freshmen, but they will matter in case of injury. And I hope they do that at quarterback, running back, and like we just talked about, center.
Yeah, no, and that's why we brought it up, man. Leave no page unturned. Provide as much depth as you can. Give yourself as much multiplicity as possible as far as play calling, scheme, all those fun things. Again, I think Derek Cooper is going to be a dang good back, but depending on a freshman to be your power guy, your in between the tackles guy, and this is not to knock Raleek Brown, and it's not to knock Hollywood Smothers. It's just sometimes, you need a little more physicality in there, a little more physical back, a little bit more downhill on the 3rd and shorts, the 4th and shorts, and things like that. And that's an issue where Texas has really struggled in the last couple of years when they haven't, been able to be very exotic and very, very creative. And so you saw, like we were running, what was it, 4th and 1 maybe, and we're running a fullback. The fullback dive essentially that we ran against Michigan last year against Wink Martindale. And so showed it to him again first year with Jerry Gibson. It worked up in Ann Arbor. It didn't work last year. And that's just one example of how, Texas is having to do things a little bit differently than most teams when it comes to those money downs, to the 3rd and shorts, the 4th and shorts, things that you got to pick up. And then obviously we've had plenty of red zone struggles as far as just a power run game. And so that's something that, I would look at when I'm deciding, and hopefully Texas is indeed adding a third back. Center, same type of thing. You got to have guys there just in case. All right. Texas had injuries at running back position, the O-line position the last couple of years. Again, not rooting for that part of the game. Be prepared to see, what that depth is like. Because again, like what did you just post, Josh? You're going to play a lot of dang football games. Yeah. You want to have guys that can get in there because everybody's going to have bumps and bruises at some point. It's going to be part of it. Go
Well,
ahead,
and on
Will.
that topic of the short yardage, like I know it was fun, but I forgot who I was sitting next to in the press box. Kind of made the point of like it's crazy that they have to do a snap between a tight end's legs to Arch Manning to pick up a 4th and 1,
Yep.
and they that's the reason they lost the Ohio State game, among a few other things. But they
Yep.
couldn't convert in the red zone. They were over 2 there, and they got stopped on 4th and shorts. They just haven't in the last 2 years been able to score in the red zone outside of Arch Manning running, or 2 years ago, I guess it would be now Jane Blue would catch passes out of the backfield that worked well. That's how they scored against Ohio State twice. They scored against A&M like that. Like, think about late in the year how Texas was scoring from within 10 yards, 10, 15 yards. It wasn't the standard, the way you think of a football team scoring in the red zone. So you're hoping that, A, your offensive line is just better at doing that, which I think they will be this year. But B, yeah, that's where you bring in a back that if he can just come in and get you that 1 yard, you don't have to have Arch Manning getting banged up and running read option plays or having to run quick scramble outs and getting take a hit as he crosses the goal line. Like, let's make sure, like Josh, said, let's get him to 17 games. Let's not have to worry about it's week 14 and he's starting to get really banged up, and then you've got a whole playoff run ahead of you.
Yep. Well said. And not, I mean, everybody scheme is all different. Oklahoma is the only college football team of all, 139, 136, whatever it is, programs. They did not attempt a handoff one single time inside the 2-yard line.
Yeah.
Now, cool, you got a John Mateer, a guy that can go run the football and get in the end zone, but you're also putting a lot of pressure on your quarterback who's taking hits outside of the red zone carries. That's not how I want Texas to operate. I want Texas to be a team that is able to turn around, hand the ball off. You still have the ability, as Evan has mentioned a couple of times now, to use Arch Manning and those legs in the red zone. So naturally, that's going to help a ton as far as red zone play calling, red zone execution. It only helps more if you got another back that you can trust to go pick up a couple of hard yards, especially after contact. Another issue, Texas has kind of struggled with in the last couple of seasons. Just think about the Cotton Bowl. Think about Ohio State, how that game ended. The fact that we're having to be, we're on the 2-yard line on a 2nd and goal, and we're thinking our best bet is to get as wide as possible and run a sweep. Now, again, hindsight is 2020, but just making my point. I'm all about modern football. But there is a beauty in being able to turn the ball hand the ball to a cat that's going to go run through a couple dudes' faces. Shout out Marshawn Lynch. Love you, buddy. But yeah, I mean, I think, overall, Texas has set itself up pretty dang well in the portal. Evan and I are going to talk a little bit more about the portal before we take a look at the 2 deep. But first, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Laura Baker.
If you're looking for a home in the Austin area, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. Laura's a part of the elite Andy Allen team at Keller Williams Realty. She's helped Longhorns find their dream homes all over Central Texas. You can just ask our very own Ian Boyd, who moved from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Whether you're searching in Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown, San Marcos, or even parts of the 254 or the 210, Laura has you covered. So call 512-784-0505, or you can email her at laura@andyallenteam.com. She's a Longhorn, a friend of Inside Texas, and the person you need to call to get your next home in Central Texas. Call Laura Baker today. Contact info is in the description.
This comment made me laugh, Josh. What's Mike Tolbert doing these days? Hey, man, we can throw a screen to that guy. Turn around. You can do a lot of different things.
I was just about to joke that, it didn't Brandon Jacobs, that 275-pounder that the Giants had, his son's 350, committed to Clemson now. Can we get that kid in to play some fullback?
I'm just saying, man, bang some people around in there in the tackle or in between the tackles a little bit. Yeah, I mean, hey, that's cool with me. Somebody that can move the weight. Let's go back 20 years. And think of a Henry Melton before he was moved to edge, and just a guy who was big. Now we're not gonna make up anything here. Henry did not run super hard as a freshman, okay, and that's all right. But I want a big body that we use in that same regard, who is just going to be able to pick up some really tough yards when we need it. Everybody knows that it's coming, and it doesn't matter. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we're looking for, in my opinion. Look at these 2 studs. Nash, you look so kind.
Shout out Nash.
Shout out, man. Still not watching Top Gun, pal. I'm sorry. Ahmad Hall, hey, some good names. Chris has got ultimate Texas football knowledge as always. But yeah, appreciate you guys being in here watching the video. Throw a quick like on it if you do not mind doing so. Retweet, all the good stuff. But yeah, you mentioned one other thing I want to talk about offensively with the portal before we maybe talk a few minutes of defense. Slot receiver. Now, that is something that people. You look at Sarkisian's offense, and they don't really attack via the slot, too often. But me personally, that's my second favorite position in all of football behind the tight end position. I love a good slot receiver who, one, can get up the seam, two, can handle all the underneath stuffs. Evan, it sounds kind of like if it were your choice, you would go ahead and add a slot receiver. What kind of player are you looking for in that? And for one, do you indeed want to add one? But what kind of skill set are you kind of looking for? And what would you want there? Maybe what's your vision for that slot in our offense?
Honestly, I'm good on the receiving core. I think anything after this would just be bringing in a guy who then just kind of gets buried, because I think we have a clear top three that you're going to want out there as many snaps as possible when you're playing these important games, and like your LSU's, your Ohio States, and then when you're playing other SEC games, but you have a little bit more comfortability to be flexible. You still have Lockett. And Dalen Cutchin's a pure slot receiver. The number one guy on the team probably should be Mosley, who he was a primary slot at Stanford, comes to Texas, plays more on the outside. I still think he's maybe going to go move back there, and Wingo's going to play a little bit in that spot. I think about Wingo bubble screens on the outside where Mosley's blocking, and you have some space because you're moving the defense to the other side with a run fake. That's a lot of fun to dream of, but I'm fine with where it's at. I think there's enough bodies there, and especially if you want to have some of those young guys be happy, really. It's the diva position. Players want to get to see the field. So with Lockett and McCutcheon, you're going to see the field. I think with the way it's worked out with French leaving and not having Livingston around, Jermaine Bishop's now your number, 4 outside receiver. He wouldn't play probably that much if they're playing in a super huge game, but he's going to have some chances to get the ball against Texas State and in your early season, and maybe they're winning a game pretty handily in the SEC. That's someone I'm excited to see, and I'm fine with not burying him down because he's a stud. He's going to play a lot of football at Texas. I don't know if it's going to be year one. So I just think adding someone's just you're putting in a guy to put in a guy, and they don't need to do that. Especially if Niblett can technically be a slot receiver if you want him to, and I think at this point that is his position. And we'll see with Terry. That's another guy who can play a slot receiver. So I'm fine with keeping it put there.
Yeah, honestly, I'm torn. I'm completely, if they stand pat, I'm okay by that because of the reasons that you just mentioned. You don't want to bury your youngsters in the depth chart. They're going to want to play. Day is a true slot guy. If I were going to add anybody, it would be somebody with a ton of experience, somebody that's pretty small and twitchy. You see those guys all over the country. Great change of direction. Obviously, a guy got big play of potential, but not just a guy that's having to run fade routes to do so. The guy that can really, again, Texas is pretty creative in the screen game, and so you already have guys like a Ryan Wingo, like an Emmett Mosley, obviously Cam Coleman, and then your backs. Texas is pretty good about getting backs involved in the passing game and the screen game as well. And considering who they've added in the portal between Brown and Hollywood, I think that I wasn't trying to make a Hollywood Brown.
I was just going to say that worked out well.
Right. I wasn't trying to tie that together, but considering their skill sets, you should bet your butt that Texas is going to have those guys heavily involved in the passing game as well. Let's move over to the defensive side. Now you talked about a Mike linebacker, and a lot of people are like, "Bro, what? We've got Rasheem Biles and we've got Ty Anthony Smith and yada yada." Juice Cryer. Tell us, why do we need a Mike linebacker? Why would we do that? And that's
I honestly made this mistake too, because when I saw Biles, I kind of jumped to the idea, especially with the way his stats look, that this is your Anthony Hill replacement. He has that athleticism. But you actually look at the tape, and for you guys who haven't seen it, the tape don't lie with Jet and Drew on Biles. It's an awesome watch. It really explains a lot about the responsibilities of a linebacker. And of course, those are guys you want to hear about linebacker play from. That's a great sweet spot position for that group to be talking about. And the way he plays as that weak side linebacker lets his athleticism flash because he's able to rush the passer, which he finds himself tackling guys in the backfield so often because he's really patient. He's taking his time to find the spot in the blitz the guards are pulling. But it also means that he's coming around the back on plays and tracking down running backs. He's good in coverage. He knows how to figure out where in the zone he needs to go. But he's not exactly that patrol the middle of the field. Maybe he could have been a green dot guy, but I think Texas would be all right with finding more of a veteran player. I know Katie Uluave was target for a while, goes to BYU. That's a team that could spend a lot of money. If they're just looking for a low floor type of guy there to have alongside Biles and Smith to rotate, that's probably the best way to go and have a true team captain there, because Texas is losing a lot of those leadership role kind of guys. And I think you can add that with Biles. You're getting that more with Simmons and Smith. But yeah, just a steady rock, a real sure tackler, I'm cool with there. The problem is right now in the portal, it's a little harder to just quickly pick and point and say, hey, that's the guy I want. But you got a whole day of people to enter tomorrow, and also a lot of these senior guys just get buried in the rankings who are better than what the 87 3-star says about them. So I'd expect Texas to look a little bit more here. Maybe that I think TJ Daugherty is the one that would stand out to people who's planning on entering from Ole Miss, but I assume he's going to LSU. That just makes the most sense to me. So we'll see on that. I do think they're going to keep looking, but worst case scenario, it's you could move Biles to the middle.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a very athletic linebacking group, no matter what. That doesn't mean that that they're productive or that they have success. We're betting that they will be. But yeah, I'm with you there. I would be more surprised than not if Texas were to not choose to go into the portal for another linebacker. I just think you have to have somebody that their true position is middle linebacker, and maybe you want to move Biles over there. Maybe it is Ty Anthony Smith, but somebody to kind of make that an easier bridge to walk over. You know what I mean? Somebody that can be there outside of the coaches. That you have an option if maybe the lights are a little too bright as far as them moving to middle, and you can baby step it if needed. Again, this is part of the no page unturned. Thank you for giving me a new saying, Evan, and I don't have to keep using the rock reference. Teamwork here. Real quick, I want to touch on a couple of the comments real quick before we go back to defense. But since you guys are on it, Wingo would probably be a fantastic slot. Just continue to improve his hands. I don't think that's an insane take, just as our guy Nick Davis said right here. Maybe Mosley's a little bit better suited. It's going to be a little bit more physical as far as blocking goes. We all know that. He's very nuanced and, in his route running. And so I either of those guys, honestly, I could definitely see it. And so y'all are already talking me out of my 50-50 thoughts on should we add another guy. Massive body, harder to jam, as Nick says again. We saw Ryan run a lot of the little drags, speed routes across the middle, whip routes, things like that. And so, he's got all that stuff in his bag, and you can see it. It can make some sense, no doubt.
Yeah, I do think that does allow him to unlock that short route, literally just running drags and mesh routes a lot. But the screen game for Texas is an outside receiver screen game, and they like doing those. I'm forgetting what it's called now, but the ones where the O-line moves forward and you hit the receiver kind of going through. And that's where Wingo and Art struggled to figure it out. But there were so many of those where if they just get the completion, he's gone. It's a 30-yard gain. And so I don't want to lose out on those too much. And I also think Mosley profiles to what Sark usually does at slot. So they'd be changing to have Wingo be there. But I'm not against that, like you guys are all saying. I think it makes sense for him to play there. I think it will be Mosley.
Yeah, it makes sense. And there's nothing in the rule book that says you can't line up Ryan Wingo at slot on 5 to 10% of snaps a game. If you have packages, if you have plays, designs, concepts, whatever it may be that you think benefit him there. Like you just said, were you talking about just like a middle screen, like where the receiver kind of bleeds into the middle and the line releases? Yeah,
there's some term for it, but that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, again, the screen game and seeing what Sark cooks up with his screen game with a downfield threat like a Cam Coleman. It's not like Coleman can't be involved in the screen game either. And so I'm really curious to see everything and how it just all comes together. But again, still got some work to do on that offensive line. We are talking defense of the portal real quick, but let's, if you don't mind, what do you think, Evan? At the end of the day, is Seton, Texas, the flirtations, is this still a thing?
I'd assume it's still a thing. In this current world, it's so hard for teams to just say we're out when they know them being in directly helps them if another team starts overpaying. So I doubt they are out on Seton. It would surprise me if they are still pushing the envelope the same way that I felt they were 2 days ago. But I don't think they would say no to Seton, as we said earlier. If he says, I would rather play for Texas than Oregon at the same price, and there's other teams in on him, but those the prevailing too, then go ahead and come to Texas and we'll figure out the line from there. I do think that adding Siani makes it a little more complicated.
No, I fully agree with you. And there's always, again, we talked about this last night as well, but from everything that's been said, Oregon's offer was more substantial than what Colorado offered Jordan, and that's obviously where he went to school. So maybe money isn't everything. Maybe he is truly looking for the best fit. Maybe he just wants to block for a really damn good quarterback because there is going to be a lot of pub that comes with that. And that's not to knock Dante Moore and say that he's not a good quarterback. I definitely do not think he is on the level of Arch Manning and will not be to, at his level in 2026. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But Arch is going to be really, really dang good. We just got to make sure the people blocking for him are really dang good as well. Yeah, you can motion around Nash. Yeah, we can do that with Ryan. We've seen Sark motion a guy at time.
They already do that when he's playing on the outside.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm really, again, leaning on the excitement about what Sark's creativity looks like with these guys.
Yeah.
You have so many different guys that you can motion between Hollywood, between Relique. Like, they're going to be able to do all their orbit stuff. They'll still have some jet stuff, I would assume, a lot less than you'll see like orbit and stuff. But all types of motion, the screen game, that's where I'm really expecting Texas to – they're going to be a successful offense, but they'll pick up chunks on the ground, as we've seen plenty of times in the Steve Sarkisian era. But all right, Evan, on defense, real quick, going back, we talked about safety. You mentioned potentially adding a safety. I'll share my thoughts, and then I'd love to get yours. But it's similar to middle linebacker spot, except for Jonah Williams is a true safety. He just doesn't have the experience. He's also going to be playing baseball in the fall. Nash almost hit me through the screen last night when I said that I do think we need somebody to kind of help come in and not necessarily hold Jonah's hand, but be an option in that spot if things don't move as quickly or swimmingly as we expect them to for Jonah. Because, again, you have an Ohio State in week 2. You have a trip to Neyland Stadium at the end of September. And that's going to be a really not necessarily complex offense, but still very difficult offense to defend because of it's different. And so why do you personally, Evan, why would you add another safety?
I would add it because I think outside of middle linebacker, which doesn't really have a starter, that's probably the position I look 1 through 11 and go, that's probably the worst starter on the team. Pick between one of Derek Williams or Xavier Filsaime. Like, they weren't great last year. Now, that was with a safeties coach who's no longer around, new defensive coordinator coming in, so a lot of this stuff is still up in the air. But that's a spot that concerns me a little bit. I wouldn't do it for depth, though. I think you have 5 players there between McDonald, those two, Jonah, and Jordan Johnson-Rubel, where that's at least 5 players that I wouldn't feel terrible about throwing on the field. And I'm a little more concerned about cornerback depth in that idea, even if I think Samari Matthews has the potential to come in and play year one. Probably not as a starter or anything, but be a backup like Cade Phillips was for the first half of the year. And Cade Phillips ended up playing his way into a starting. Well, that would be a big expectation for Matthews. But, yeah, I think they need a starting safety more than they need a starting corner, but I think they need a backup corner more than they need a starting safety, if that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense. And, again, time will tell if they are out and they do choose to maybe pass on Jordan Seaton. Again, you have money that you can now allocate to these other positions and maybe be a little bit more aggressive, and maybe even a position that you didn't consider adding somebody for depth or somebody just that could compete for, to be a starter. That gives you a bigger chance to do so. So how will Texas spend that money? How will this defense look? We talked about middle linebacker a little bit, talked about safety, talked about corner as potential adds in the portal. We're going to hear a word from David McClellan, and when we come back, we're going to look at kind of what this 2 deep looks like. And again, there will still be some additions, of course. Things could reshuffle. There is going to be competitions for starting jobs, but we'll get into all that in just one moment.
Big financial decisions don't have to feel overwhelming. There's someone who can guide you every step of the way. David McClellan is a fiduciary financial advisor with Forum Financial, and he's working closely with his clients as a true financial life coach, guiding every aspect of your financial journey with expertise and care. If his name sounds familiar, that's because David was a swimmer at Texas and a member of several national championship teams. Today, he channels that same championship mindset into helping people win with their finances. David specializes in financial planning, and he's contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. And right now, David is offering viewers a free intro consultation to assess your financial situation. Do not miss this chance to get personalized guidance from a trusted expert. To schedule your free consult, email David at dmcclellan@forumfinancial.com, or you can call him directly at 312-933-8823. The contact info is in the description.
Alrighty, guys, let's get to some 2 deep talk. And we're going to fly around. It's kind of like a rewatch show a little bit that we do on Sundays after games. We're going to fly around from position group to position group and just kind of see if, we're at an acceptable level of depth, at least from Evan and I's perspective. So with that being said, let's start with the quarterback. And you've already made it pretty clear, you think Texas needs to add basically a clipboard holder on the sidelines. You have another body. You have KJ Lacey. You've got Dia Bell, who's newly arrived on campus. Is KJ your solidified number 2 in your mind?
No, I want a second one. Have 4 quarterbacks in your room makes it a lot higher of a chance that you can really compete in a game with Arch Manning out. I think if Arch gets hurt, then your season's probably not in a great spot anyway. But
Right.
give KJ the chance to beat out the guy, like not just bringing a dude to bring in a dude, and even if he's worse than Lacey. But yeah, I think the Caldwell experiment worked so well last year. I mean, he came in, had a really good throw against Florida, got subbed out, and then had helped win the game against Mississippi State. It was a fantastic throw to Mosley, and I think everyone was pretty happy with what he did behind the scenes from all the players talking about him. So let's do that one more year, and we're good.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I fully agree with you. And since we are technically talking about quarterbacks, I agree with you guys. I was trying to be nice, and you know what? I'm just not going to do it. That's the reason I had Indiana winning that game. I thought their defense of Oregon would keep them around a little bit more. But yeah,
blowout.
Completely different player. Yeah, good Lord. And started from the jump because he got baited a little bit. Is this true, Evan? Have you seen any confirmation on this? Is Jordan Seaton that?
I saw someone else say it, so yeah, I wasn't around to see what Nako said, but I'll do the research while you talk.
There we go. Yeah, I mean that would be an interesting revelation. You know what I mean? LSU, that would make sense. Even a place like Tennessee who has shown they're going to pay some pretty high dollar. I don't know exactly what their tackle situation looks like. But yeah, that is a little bit of a random tidbit there. If true,
Famil 10 minutes ago, visit to Mississippi State.
I don't even know how to wrap my head around
his first O-line coach they committed to is now the Mississippi State O-line coach. That now makes a little more sense. Okay, still odd.
Yeah, still odd. Respect the guy for having enough respect for that relationship to where he feels he owes him a visit there. But I would be absolutely shocked if, again, maybe it's not all about money, but if they were entering and getting ready to or prepared to win a bidding war for Jordan Seaton, because I don't think they're well equipped as some others that are involved in that race. And yeah, talk about Jalen Ford. That would be fun to have him back for another year.
Yeah,
Always appreciate you being in here, Mr. DKW. Thank you very much, my man. But yeah, so let's go to the running back position again. We've talked a little bit about it. I think it's pretty clear who your 1 and 2 are. You're going to have a Raleek Brown and a Hollywood Smothers. There's some games where maybe it looks like it's Hollywood Smothers and then Raleek Brown. How do you feel overall about the depth chart there? And are you comfortable with those two as your top 2 guys?
Yeah, definitely comfortable with them as the top 2. Probably one of the best tandems that we're going to see in college football this year. I mean, I thought Smothers was going to declare like that. This was before portal stuff. I knew about him. I'd seen some of his games. He's a good back, and I was like, oh, this is a 4th round running back. Just slot him in, get him to an NFL team, let him compete for a starting job. But no, so I'm glad they have those 2. I think a running back 2 deep, kind of the same way as tight end is 3 players. So that third guy we've talked about already on the show, maybe that's a random bruising 240 G5 guy, or I could be convinced that can be Simon or Cooper or Terry this year, and probably Simon or Cooper more likely, and be fine with that. They're talented players, but they gotta show that they're actually able to hit the right holes consistently, do more than just out athlete some guys. Because that's what I'm a little concerned with Cooper year 1 is, was he just out athleting people in Florida, or can he actually go do the design pass block a little bit? So I bring in one more, but I'm pretty happy with where it's at.
Yeah, me too. And again, I got a text a few minutes ago, and he said, man, he's a little bit, he's into Texas football, no doubt, but he was like, wait, we really just got two pretty, not elite backs, but two pretty damn good ones. And so
fast players.
It's like fast players are really going to help Arch Manning in this offense. You talk about a vertical passing game, being able to, help a run game. These guys are going to be able to help in the passing game as well, which again, maybe see some lighter boxes strictly because of how much speed and quickness Texas can be able to put on the field, and then Sark's amenity for, throwing bombs. So I'll tell you what, Fernando, this is my favorite comment maybe ever on this show, man. You tell my little guy Yasiel, I said, hook him right back, man. And we're getting ready for Saturday to go to war. One of my 6-on-6 guys. He's got, I think he has like 75% of our receptions this year. So we need Yasi ready.
Yasiel.
Yeah, it's our guy, man. He's got hands, and then he likes to gritty too. So the very first pass he caught in practice one day, he hit the gritty right after. So he's got full permission to gritty in the end zone when he scores this weekend, because Yasi's getting in the end zone, man. Tell him hello for us, and thanks for watching, my friend. But yeah, so you've talked quarterback, talked a little running back. Let's go to wide receiver now. Again, what is your expectations of 1, 2, and 3 to look like? I think it's kind of written on the wall for us already. Yeah. Is it as simple as, hey, it's going to be Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo, and Emmett Mosley?
It should be. Now, I think there's going to be a little bit of a Dylan McCutcheon agenda you're going to see pushed here there. I think he's gone. It went from they really liked how quick he was developing to fans not liking him because he's had a few drops. and they thought that he was playing too much compared to Lockett and French, and now French is gone. I could care less about a guy who was a backup in his first year with some drop problems. But I want to see McCutchen play, but let's make the top three what we know is a good trio of wide receivers: Coleman, Wingo, and Mosley, and then McCutchen, Lockett, Bishop as your next batch of receivers. When you're blowing out Texas State, they come in the third quarter. That sounds pretty fun to me. I'm good with that.
I'm honestly cool with it. It's that is what it should be. But yes, you did have to add the caveat.
Yeah, they were bad drops.
They were some awful drops. And got to call it what it is. Hopefully those issues will be resolved. We've got time to work, baby. But let me say this. I need Sark's rotation at wide receiver. I need to get a little bit deeper for the reasons that you just mentioned. I want to see Khalil Lockett. I want to see Day-Day McCutchen. Maybe it's me starting that agenda. Maybe I'm screaming on Twitter. Let's see some more Day-Day. But I am very excited to see Jermaine Bishop. This is one of the more absolute overall electric wide receiver commits that Texas has ever had. This is a guy that, he basically has done everything on a football field in the last 2.5, 3 seasons. So it's really, really important to me that, we kind of get him acclimated a little bit, because maybe he is a guy that can really help this offense mid to late season. But again, when you have a 1, 2, and 3 that seem to kind of have a stranglehold on those spots, that guys, when they get in, man, they're going to have to maximize, their playing time, and they're going to have to make plays happen. And you saw that some with Day-Day McCutchen last year, and then you saw that with Khalil Lockett in the bowl game a little bit. Making plays is that's the fastest way to get more PT. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Do you care about the history of Sark and the lack of maybe a wide receiver rotation, or just do you care at all?
I think in this type of era we're in, 4 receivers is nice to have. It's hard to go through a full season where they're all 3 are healthy. You're fronting. Like, I look at Indiana and Becker, who's their number 1 deep threat right now, wasn't their starter to start the year, and now he's making plays every game. Like that could be Khalil Lockett, but at worst he should be able to come in and play him and block on run plays. And if he's only running clear outs, then run really, really good clear out routes and make a play downfield here or there. There's a double-edged sword of, you have to be on the field to make plays, but when you're on the field, go make some plays. And he really did that in the Citrus Bowl. I'll give him that. Like, no offense to some of the guys who transferred out, but when they were down all of their receivers outside of French, Lockett, Livingston, and McCutchen, it was only Lockett who was making plays on the field. He was the only guy really. He had a catch before that, and then had the big play there, and then Arch used his legs, and the game was over. But I want to see Lockett kind of assert himself as that number 4 guy, and then I think you're good. At the end of the day, I know people love talking about depth. By the time you're in week 7, outside of injuries, you're using the same 20 people on each side of the ball every game. So I could care less if they're losing some of these guys, and I think they have the right players at receiver for sure.
Oh, well said, man. It's kind of funny how it's not just me. Anybody in Texas media, any Texas fan, you hear a guard went in the portal, bro, the ears perk up, and it's almost like I don't care who the name is. You could hear it from a mile away. I'd be in HEB, not even holding my phone, and I could just feel the senses. There's a guard in the portal. We must look at him. So I'd be curious to see who that guard is. And Texas, of course, has interest. We know they're hunting guards. Mississippi State, I'm pretty sure they've had a couple of decent ones, but again, that team overall did struggle. So let's get, if anybody has a name, please feel free to share it, or if Evan, if you want to pull it up, let us know who it is. Zach Owens. All right, Zach Owens. That's probably the next guy that Texas fans, create a little bit of affinity for, and are screaming, "Hey, we're not unless we Zach. We got to have Zach, and we got to have him tomorrow, baby." Again, guys, appreciate y'all being here. Throw a like on the video if you haven't done so yet. All right. We could talk O-line depth, but we don't have any. And so we're going to skip it completely. And again, we'll touch back on this. Plenty of time off season to look at this offensive line, to look at the 2 deep, how I think the depth might stack out come, opening week when Texas State and GJ Kinney come to DKR. But for now, we're going to go over to the defensive side of the ball.
Well, one thing before we go, let's not generalize O-line. The tackles look great now. Like, I think we have 3 guys who should be starting tackles, another 2 guys with experience on the bench. Just brought in Newman, who's the Brooks replacement, if you want to call it that, and they got freshmen coming in. They got tackles. It's just the interior.
Well, and I will say, I feel bad. This is the second time I did this. We were going to skip tight ends. I just believe it's my favorite position in football, and I was about to slide right by it again.
2 tight ends.
Nick Townsend, clearly tight end number 1. After that, you've added Mike Masunas out of Michigan State. Go Sparty. Then you talk about Spencer Shannon. You talk about Emery Winston. What are your thoughts there on who is it truly just Townsend and then Big Mike out of Michigan State, or do you think these other guys might have a fight for that second spot?
I wouldn't be surprised if Masunas had led the group in snaps in week 2 against Ohio State. I mean, that's a guy who's played Ohio State before and he actually was a great tight end. That's a guy who's played Ohio State, won, and also like has way more experience, has caught more passes, had more snaps in college football than Townsend. Though I do think the likely factor is either he's already ready by week 2 and I think Nick Townsend's just kind of a freak athlete, or he's going to end up having that be the number 1 role by the end of the year. And then I like what's behind them. I think I read about this recently, like a 13 personnel would be awesome. I'd be down for them running those two and Spencer Shannon out there and running the damn ball a few times. This is the second time I've been with you, Curtis. That doesn't really count though. But I'd be down to use some 13. That intrigues me. And I think Amari Winston's, if he's your 4th tight end, I'm pretty happy with that. I think they're done there.
Yeah, I think you're done there. In my opinion, Nash, appreciate super chat, man. I don't hate tight ends, okay? Hello, Blake Helm, you're my guy. Don't let Nash slander my love for tight ends. It's strong, okay? But no, I definitely agree with you, man. There's still a lot of work that Townsend has to do to be, as elite of a tight end as we, Townsend can be. Seems like Masunas is going to be, pretty rocked, ready to go, ready to go from the jump. Well, I don't know what I was trying to say there, but yeah, as we talked about a lot last night, he can do a little bit of the stuff underneath. He's a block and release guy in some of these pass routes and pass concepts. And so, man, I think it's going to be, we're pretty solid at that tight end position again, because I think you saw Spencer Shannon improve throughout the course of the season. Looked a lot better in 12 personnel from a blocking standpoint than he did early in the year. Much, much, much better. I cannot put an emphasis on much enough. But again, still not a perfect player in that regard. You talk about Winston. Yeah, we haven't really of him. But from the sound of it, I mean, the guy really, really goes to work. Guys that are ahead of him, some really, really talented guys. But maybe he's able to close that gap and find his way onto the football field. Some 13 personnel could be fun. We talked a little bit about that last night. I saw somebody in the comments earlier mention 21 personnel with giving Ryan Wingo a pitch, or maybe backdooring him off of some outside zone. Hey, I'm with you. Just know whoever your favorite commenter today. Sorry, Nash. Sorry about that, buddy. I know you got the super chat in, but all right. So again, not to knock the tackles. We've got great tackle depth at the moment. Okay. Yeah. Got your swing tackle. If he indeed does stay a tackle and Baker indeed stays a tackle, that's something that Texas didn't really have this past year, and puts you in a pretty, pretty good spot. Because again, we talked about injuries being inevitable and part of the game. So there's a chance, you use all 3 of those guys throughout the season, even if it might be just for 1 to 2 weeks. You don't know. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. We talked a little bit about linebackers, but I'll start there. Are you pretty comfortable? The major concern just 2 weeks ago, we got linebackers, LaFau gone, Elijah Bobarnes gone, and so all of a sudden, obviously you lost Trey Moore, you lost Anthony Hill. But yeah, in that room, are you pretty comfortable with the depth, and then also just the front end starters? And I know we talked a little bit about potentially adding a middle linebacker. So without that middle linebacker, how are you feeling?
I'm comfortable with the depth. I'd like a starter. I think between Cryer and I guess technically Smith would be a backup now, but we know that's not exactly how it would work. He'd play quite a bit still. Cryer just replaces what Barnes would have been. I know it's not a long-term replacement, but it's just probably a safer option heading into next year than Barnes would have been, and cheaper most likely. And then you got Tyler Atkinson, who I want to see hit the field a few times. That's the kind of true freshman that I'm excited to see play. I'm not interested in burying him any more than sort of already is with Biles and Smith ahead of him. So let's get that starting linebacker. I could go into next year with this linebacker group being like this. It would concern me, a bit of an alarm, but I'm fine with it. And I definitely don't think they need to add any more Cryer types that are just going to come in and immediately be on the 2 deep and not starting.
No, I agree with you there. Do you think there's a chance that Cryer started at middle linebacker if the season started tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so. I think their goal was to have him be the number 2, but he's probably good enough to do that, and he's played a lot of college football, so he could do that and probably not make many mistakes. I just don't think he'd have the quite the playmaking potential that you saw with Anthony Hill.
Yeah, I agree. He's got a little bit lower of a ceiling, a little bit less explosive, and so yeah, that would be maybe the safe choice. You know what I mean? But again, the season doesn't start tomorrow. It's not until I don't know if it's late August or early September. I don't know when the old Bobcats come to town. But yeah, I mean, that's a guy that you can trust, that you know exactly what you're going to get out of. It's well said. Nash, number 2 in linebacker snaps last year with Florida State. Again, he's got some juice, and I'm not trying to be funny there. I'm really not. I say the word juice a lot. All right, guys. But no, so linebacker depth, I mean, we don't know exactly how it shakes out as far as the starters and how that looks. I definitely agree with you on Tyler Atkinson. It's going to be a weapon that Texas is able to utilize at times. Probably not going to be ready to go out there and be, you know, one of the top 3 guys in total snaps. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but time will tell. And he's going to be, again, all things hold the way that they look on his tape. That's a guy that probably is a first-round talent and going to the league here in just a couple of years. So let him work his way into it. Again, I think we do need a middle linebacker just to, you know, ease into this, make sure we have guys that we can trust. You know exactly what you're going to get out of them, who understand what you're trying to accomplish as a defense. Let's talk about edge. You've got Colin Simmons over on one side. You've got a slew of guys potentially on the other side. Lance Jackson obviously is an athlete that, you know, you don't see too many of those. So talking about the edge position, man, are you pretty confident, pretty comfortable there? Or maybe would you add one more body to help that depth?
Well, Texas has been looking a lot. I mean, the Jaden Woods conundrum for a while. He ended up going back to Florida, and then they were in on Caleb Herring, who today announced he's going to South Carolina. I could go without it, really. I'm a little. I would have preferred if they were to go for one of them to go for a really experienced guy, but they were kind of looking for these like play and then develop and then eventually stay at Texas for 2 or 3 years. If it's anything, it would be like a true backup to Simmons who can come in when they need him to. So Brad Spence, we actually haven't talked about it in the linebacker discussion, but Spence can really turn into that Trey Moore type. But if Spence is still going to rush the passer off the edge some, then you're looking at Simmons, Moore, Jackson, Umeah Zulu. That's before you get to Colton Gossick, who I guess would be the 4 or 5 here. If he and Zena are staying around, I'm done at edge rusher. I think that's an awesome group.
Yeah,
I don't really want Prince Will. That's doing too much.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit too much. Obviously, you know, he's not going to come in and play over Colin Simmons, and I think you like what you have on the other side. I also would be very, very surprised if he is not in Baton Rouge. Just I would be hard pressed to believe Kiffin lets that guy get in the portal without the predetermination that he will be a Tiger. Again, could be wrong on that. Hell of a player, but yeah, as Evan said, I think we're good there. You can spend your money elsewhere and, you know, provide more structure to this team than what you would do adding a Prince U. I'm not going to pretend how to say his last name because that's been kicking my tail for several years now. All right.
We're out of college football.
Yeah, no kidding, right? How about the interior of the D-line, brother? What do you think we see as far as the 1-2 there? Obviously, talk about the addition of Ian Giffard from Arkansas, who's most likely going to be our nose tackle. And so, yeah, what are your thoughts on the interior of the defensive line as far as the 1 and 2s?
Yeah, I think once again, Kanu is gonna lead in the snaps. He's the best one out of that group. I think he's a phenomenal player and started the year really well, and then it was just quiet with him after a while. But he was a rock in the middle of that team all season long. And then it's just like last year. You're gonna have a top 3 with January, Watson, and a nose tackle. Giffard is your immediate Cole Brevard replacement, and I think they saw last year that Travis Shaw was nice to have, but more luxury than anything in that group. I think they're gonna stick to those 4 pretty heavily. Those are your guys this season, and that's an awesome group of 4. And then I would have liked them to maybe try to find one more long-term guy because you only got one guy in the 26 class, James Johnson. But the talent is clearly there in that next crop of 4 guys with Williams as a nose tackle. And I think either Sharma or Charles. I think Sharma's maybe more of a nose if I'm not getting it mixed up. Charles, even Justice Terry is kind of that in-between guy. There's plenty to like about this D-line. I'm done there personally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of it is unproven. A lot of it is some youth. But man, that a lot of upside in that room. And obviously, it's not all unproven. You do have some experience there. I'm very excited to see, what that group looks like. I think it'll be a little bit better overall than it was a year ago. I just think I like the talent of those guys, the ceiling of that room a little bit higher than I did in 2025. All right, let's go ahead and go to corner. Let's bounce out there and talk about, you mentioned the adding one more backup corner. So is that because you have paused what we're potentially running out there at 1 and 2? Or are you more of a fan of Grayson Littleton on the inside? What are your thoughts there?
I don't see the 6 right now. If you're talking about two outside backups and then an inside and a backup, Littleton, Mack are your inside guys. you have Masco and Phillips, and then Kobe Black returned. But with Warren Roberson in the portal, and Santana Wilson left, and Jalen Gilbo and Malik Muhammad are gone, like that next guy is Samari Matthews, the true freshman. That's a lot of trust in Samari Matthews. So I would be very interested to see them take a slot, and I don't know how that would affect Wardell Mack, but like a veteran slot player, give Littleton the keys to the outside with Phillips, still have Masco, still have Black, still have Mack. That's a pretty talented group right there. That's a lot of good players. But I do know that there's a lot of guys in that group. Kobe Black could be a better slot player because of his size, and maybe he struggles a little bit to run downfield. He got burned a few times at Texas and struggled with a super physical player like Dallas Wilson, the pretty obvious one. Maybe he's more of an inside guy. We know Mack is more of an inside guy. We've seen Littleton play there, even if he made profiles in the NFL in future as an outside cornerback. So I would like one more guy there. And I think that could either be a starting nickel or a backup cornerback. But I don't know if I want to add, I don't think there's a lockdown CB1 left in the portal that you can go get. And at that point, then you're doing too much. I keep saying that. You're doing too much. If you're getting more and more of these absurd talents, you might just be having a guy leave after that.
Now, do you have a little bit of PTSD, like myself, about the potential of moving a Grayson Littleton out to cornerback, considering the failed experiment of moving Jalen Gilbo out to cornerback? I think Graveson eventually, he's going to be pretty formidable out there on the outside by himself. But for me, man, and considering the whole leave no stone unturned attitude, I would be really comfortable just adding one more body there, making sure that you're able to keep Grayson on the inside. I think they know what you have in a Cade Phillips. But, it's Masco. This is a whole different level of competition for the young man. You know what I mean? I think it's a good addition. Obviously, Coach, there's a little bit of familiarity there with the kid. But overall, at the end of the day, I think I have to have one more body, man, just like you. You started naming names, and it's a pretty thin group overall.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Add one more guy, and maybe that is just like you said, that is an outside cornerback. And I was hoping they'd get one of those young Michigan players, Sanders and Dotson, who entered the portal, true freshmen, but especially Sanders, because Kilgore, I think, is where he's from, but he went to Notre Dame. I don't think they pursued him all that hard. But yeah, let's get one more guy in that group, and then he might just be done in the secondary at that point, because that's a lot of bodies.
That is a lot, yes, sir. I mean, I do think that Notre Dame actually has done pretty dang well. Probably the best portal cycle that they've ever had, and that's just one of the several impressive gets. Again, so let's talk safeties before we get out of here, man. We've kind of already talked safeties multiple times on this show. I feel like we would like a little bit more maybe experience. Obviously Derek Williams, it's not his fault that he got injured Red River before last and had to miss a lot of time. Didn't look like himself. But how are you feeling about the 1 and 2 deeps for the safety position, brother?
Yeah, one scares me more than two. I just want to make sure that number 2 guy that they have out there with McDonald, they really like and fits into the Muschamp system. We haven't even mentioned how we're going to do a new system. So there's some things about the way these players are going to play and their responsibilities that are going to be different that we don't know about yet. I've had people talk to me about how they're a little concerned about Littleton being the slot because they want a more physical, go get the ball. And that's fair. The one criticism I'd have of Littleton his freshman year was he was a little bit adverse to going and getting into the pile and being the first guy to hit a player. And that if he's better suited to go be a right one man-on-man cornerback outside, and then you want to have a different slot, then I understand that. But yeah, I'm Williams. I really like him. I wished he never gotten injured. He was so good those first 2 years. Gets injured and then kind of goes into a safety room that probably wasn't coached the way it should have been last year. Nope. I do think, man, Xavier Filsaime is such a freak athlete, and it gets underrated a little bit about him. Like Filsaime and McDonald, when they're at their top tier and he gets another year of development into a system, he was just a redshirt freshman last year. Like year 3, there's some things about him that really intrigue me as big hitter, go and cover a large piece of area deep down the field and have McDonald play a little bit more in the box. That does intrigue me a lot. So I would give him the chance there. I'm a little concerned. That's where I'm at.
Need a thumper as your nickel, somebody that's going to come in there, get into the fray, help set the edge, and that was an issue that Texas had last year in 25 was keeping that edge set. Not just Grayson's fault, the nickel's not always responsible for setting the edge. And again, I do have to bring it up real quick. Vic Schaefer, the Lake Horns, tied at 32 with South Carolina at halftime on the road against Don Staley's number 2 ranked Gamecocks. Texas led a lot of that first half. I've had an eye on it down here. But yeah, that again, big game for Texas basketball, coming off their first loss of the season, playing South Carolina, who's only lost of the season, Texas, back in Vegas in November. And I'll also a really quick shout out to Sean Miller and the men's hoops team, who all of a sudden overnight, over a couple of nights, really turned the outlook of that season around, man. You're talking about a team who had less than a 10% chance of making the NCAA tournament. I was on this show 2 weeks ago. I said if we won 3 conference games, I would be okay with it, because I thought that we were really, really going to struggle. And then all of a sudden, bang, you had the win in Tuscaloosa, a game that was insane. You get multiple leads that you then blow, but Alabama back into the game, find a way to win. And then the second half against Vanderbilt last night was a lot of fun to watch. Shout out Tremont Mark. Yeah. Give me one more.
Mark and Weaver, man.
Yeah. Weaver, man. I don't ever want to see him play anywhere else but Burn Orange. I know eventually he has to leave the program, but man, that's just an easy kid to root for. Really, really easy to get behind. So will Texas finally run the ball? We'll let you know when we know exactly who is blocking for these guys. We'll give you our best thoughts then. But in the meantime, patience on that O-line, guys. We talked about patience last night. Texas went out and added Melvin Siani today out of Wake Forest. There will be more coming. We'll see on who those names are. We'll see if Jordan Seaton potentially is one of them. Evan, my man, anything else before we get out of here and go watch Vic and the ladies take these Gamecocks?
No, let's go watch some hoops.
Let's go watch some hoops, my man. I love that. Guys, thanks for watching. Remember, Ultimate Fan Bundle, Transfer Portal Ultimate Fan Bundle is at 50% off right now. I'll throw it up one more time really, really quickly. Go join us. Come hang out on IT. Come chat on the boards, man. It's been a lot of fun. And again, it's going to be a long off season. We might as well all spend it together right over on InsideTexas.com. Y'all come check it out. But for now, we're out of here. We'll see y'all. I'll be back on Sunday. I'm sure Evan, he's on here like 3 times a day. He lives on.
I'll be around
on stream. He'll be around floating. All right, guys. Y'all have a great night. And hope